I am standing between you and lunch, I think, or shortly there will be lunch. So, and you just came back from a break, so I hope you're all invigorated and excited to learn. As excited as I am to be here. So this is actually my second time at the Email Insider Summit. I was here in 2012, which seems like so long ago. When I checked in last night, they said, we had you here in 2012. I was like, oh, wow, that was a really long time ago. And it was fun to listen to Caesars talk because I used to work for a lot of the different Caesars Entertainment properties and MGM and those properties. And now I don't get to gamble when I go into work. So we're going to talk about something else. So St. Kate, worked for Marcus Hotels and Resorts, 21 hotels and resorts, 50 restaurants. We're the 4th largest movie theater company in the world. And today we're talking about St. Kate. St. Kate is the Arts Hotel. St. Kate is the only hotel like this in the United States. And we're going to talk about how we personalize that. So what is St. Kate? St. Kate, I was brought in a little over 2 years ago to build this hotel. I handle all things marketing. I grew up in the digital space, though. I grew up in the email space, the data space, and now I get to touch all different types of things. We studied 55 different hotels in the US, all art-themed hotels, to look at what we liked, what we didn't like, and what we found was that there was a need for a hotel concept that celebrates all arts, right? It's a place, you can lay your head at any hotel. You can go sleep in any hotel room anywhere, but you want an experience. When we talk about email, when we talk about data, that's an experience. And the hotel should feel the same. So what we decided is to build St. Kate, a muse of St. Catherine. Our muse was St. Catherine, the patron saint of arts. St. Kate is St. Catherine's, let's say, like badass older sister. And not the crazy aunt, not the crazy art aunt, the badass older sister. She celebrates all art forms. We built a theater, a 95-seat black box theater in our hotel. We have 4 different galleries in our hotel. We have a maker space. We have an artist in residence. As you can see, one of our hotel rooms there, it's appropriately named the Leopard Room. And the Leopard Room was created by Lon Michaels, an artist. We have 5 artist rooms where partial proceeds go back to nonprofits as well. And we are there to help build in the creative process. So it's first of its kind, it's different, so everything needs to be different. We don't like to do anything like it's been done before. And so we partnered with a museum. We have Museum of Wisconsin Art. This is based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. New York Times calls it a one-of-a-kind. Chicago Tribune calls it the only hotel like it. Right now on USA Today's top hotels that you need to check out, we're #1. So if you haven't been there and you like the cold, because we're all here, you should come to Milwaukee and enjoy the cold as well. But what do? We didn't want to do anything like we normally do. And art is scary. Art is intimidating. I can tell you firsthand, I went to the Art Hotel in Denver, and there was a giant red circle on the wall. And I was like, cool, a giant red circle. I don't care, like, whatever. And my boss, Greg Marcus of the Marcus Corporation, was like, Erin, that is a $2 million blah, blah, blah. And I was like, huh, I think I should be an artist. I could do a giant red circle on the wall. That seems, I mean, it literally was a painted giant red circle. Now, I'm not trying to offend anyone. I don't need a letter or like, don't tweet like, oh, she doesn't understand art. How'd she do this? But art is subjective. Art is different. And because of that, it's very personal. And it's a hurdle. How many times do you go into a museum and you're like, I really want to learn about this? And next to art, there's a little card. It's called a didactic. Didn't know that until we started this project. And on that didactic that you have to squint down to look at, you can read maybe when the author was born or the painter was born, maybe when they died. Sometimes they say when he painted it. You don't really know, right? And sometimes it gives you a story. Sometimes the story is relevant to you. Sometimes it's not. So what do you do with that? We need to overcome that obstacle. We need to make it so people don't walk in and go, oh, okay, cool, art, leave. We want them to experience it. So we had this idea. We have an in-house creative design team called Gradient that I oversee as well. We had this idea that what if we created a tour of the art. Now, most museums you go into, they hand you the big headset, right? If you go to the Statue of Liberty, big headset, big lanyard, hangs on there, you can push a button, very cumbersome. Well, that's not great. So we wanted something a little more simplistic, a little easier. Why not build an app? So we had a Pfister app Pfister is a 125-year-old historic hotel, also in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And if you haven't been there, it's the 5-star luxury hotel of Milwaukee, so you can't miss it. And we built an app there we have the world's largest hotel Victorian art collection there. So we wanted people to go through that. Now, to be fair, Pfister also, demo, 60-year-old plus, looking at that art collection, not as excited about downloading the app as we knew the St. Kate customer would be. So what did we do? We needed to build something. We needed to enhance it. We needed to make it so people wanted to touch it, feel it, learn about it. Now, we had to build a CMS. We had to build the architecture. We had to build an API base. And it turns out art doesn't stay the same. It changes. So we couldn't just build it and let it go like we all like to do with all technology. We had to build something that was able to change and to be touched and easy to update, because the last thing you want to do is have to go to an IT person and go, can we update the app? We put in a new artist, and then we'd get put into a queue, and it turned out we would never be a priority because IT never thinks we're a priority, even though we're obviously the most important people, and we make the most money. So with that said, we had to build a backend, a CMS that was easy to understand. And it turns out, I don't know if you know this, artists aren't easy to work with. They're not. So artists work on their own time, and they're very particular. It's interesting. Frazee was just up here talking about language. They're very particular about how you talk about their art, what words you use. And it could be something little like an and versus a the, and they'll be like, no. It changes the context. It changes the phrase. It changes the word. It changes the language. So we needed something that was easy to update and that our curator, who we had hired, could also update. So we built our own CMS that we could update exhibits. We could update different collections. We have a 150-piece art collection that we own, but then we have rotating artists internationally and nationally coming in to work with us, and we need to be able to quickly get that launched, which brought us to the Art Tour app. So what can we do with the Art Tour app? You can take your self-guided tour. You can view each piece, which is grouped by a collection. You can read about the artist's work, all that stuff that you might have been able to get off of the didactic, which you didn't want to be the weirdo standing in front of the piece of art this close. Like, I can tell you, I go to the art museum all the time, only because my kids go there and it's something to do with my kids so that I don't have to, like, really watch them. And we go and look at the art, and this is how we look at the art. We're like, oh, that was cool. Right? I'm never going to be the person saying like this, but if there's an art tour and an art tour that talks to the type of person I am, much more excited about doing it. And then we added an audio tour because what we want is for you to experience the art, not the app. We want this to be frictionless, and yes, I use the word frictionless. Later I'll use omni-channel and big data just for the fun of it. But we want it to be frictionless because we don't want people to have to worry about like, oh, where am I in the app? Where are we at? We had to talk about beacons. How do we know where people are? But guess what? As we're going through this, we realized we're getting a lot of data. We're getting a lot of information about what people are engaging in, what they like, what they stop on, which led us to building it out even further and being able to look at, like, what do people like? If you're interested in, like, a red circle on the wall, I'm not, but someone is. Or if you're interested in more of the contemporary art or the controversial art. And that was a big deal too. Controversial art in a hotel was a big challenge because should I put it in there? Should I not put it in there? Where can I find it? And how can we bring people and the story to people? Because there is a story behind every piece of art there. We have an exhibit right now where it's called, I believe it's called Sleepless. And this photographer took a picture of every bed he slept in for the past 30 years. And I thought, that's commitment. Because 30 years ago, he had to go, you know what? Someday, I'm going to do an exhibit. So I'm going to start now taking a picture of all these different types of beds. But to him, that's really important. That's really exciting. And that's exciting to some of you. Some of you are like, oh, that's interesting. I could do that. Go home, take a picture of your bed, and we'll see where you're at in 30 years. So we have to market the app. We have to get people to download it in order to get this data. So we added it to our pre-arrival email, our web and digital marketing, our point of check-in, right? We had to get the front desk excited to talk about the app. We had to create an overcoming the hurdle. We give them something if they download the app, because guess what? I'm taking all their data. I'm taking everything they're doing on this app in and trying to figure it out. And then being able to update them on when new collections, when interesting things happen, and creating the collateral. So it's a full 360 look at how we're getting people involved in this. But as we've said, art is subjective, it is personal. And we're talking about personalization. So what better place to start than with something that I don't know if you guys saw, Banksy did a piece of art this weekend. It's a white wall, and he duct taped a banana to it. And someone went and ate the banana. I think I would have done that, because it's an effing banana taped to a wall. But that's art, and it's probably cost a shit ton of money, I don't know. So it's personal. So how do we talk about that? Different types of art, it means something to different people, right? I'm not a huge, like Picasso's cool, right? We learned about it in school. I think I could have probably done this too, but I don't know. Banksy at the top there, you have interactive art, places where people can play and get involved, and they want to know where they can go to do that, and it's fun, and it starts to teach the younger generation. So because of that, we have to talk about the power of personalization, and what better place for it to come alive. So our app's only 6 months old. This is relatively new. We are still testing, and that's one thing I've heard here a lot, is how much we're testing everything. I love TransUnion. She goes, now I just use it back to the CEO. I'm just like, yeah, we can test it. And that, I think we should all do that. We should be like, okay, we'll test it and just add it to the list, right? But we're testing everything. So we have to create we know we have to create a better search tool within the app. We're doing AR technology in the app. Lenses is the most personalized piece of it, which is, if you're a kid, you want to learn about the fun kid stuff and the kid art that's in the hotel. If you seem to interact more with contemporary art versus historical art, being able to share when those things come online, being able to email you with that information is really important, and all that data is connected, right? You give your email. We get your email when you download the app. We have that. We have your text when you check into the hotel. We get your cell phone and we start texting you. So by tying all of this together, we're able to truly communicate with someone. Now, when I have an exhibit come to town that is contemporary, I know exactly who's going to want to come to that opening. I know who exactly is going to want to put on social media that they checked it out first and foremost, because guess what? Everybody likes to be the first person to see something and say something. That's why the guy ate the banana. Beacon technology, knowing where you're at, right? I'm on a video tour, and it says, like, now you're looking at X woman art piece. And you're like, no, that's dogs playing poker. I think I'm in the wrong spot. So being able to take the beacon technology and know exactly where you're standing, and make sure that if you moved, that the audio tour catches up with you, and then cater to their interests. And so sometimes what people say and what people do are very different. We all know that, right? A long time ago, I was talking to someone who said they gave everybody a preference sheet, and they would mark all their preferences on it, and then they'd go watch their web behavior, and they found out what someone was doing and what someone was saying was very different. Turns out in Vegas, it's very much like that too. I came from Vegas. I spent 10 years working in Vegas. What someone will tell me to my face that they like to do and what someone actually does turns out to be different. And it's really important that your host knows that about you. That's why when we looked at the night, when we looked at the books and how many cash-paying guests we had, still important to know what they do, even though they don't want us to know what they do, right? Because that's how we made sure they enjoyed it there. So same idea. We cater to their interests based on what they're interacting with, what they're touching, what we've seen them walk by. And it's a full funnel, because they have to come in and know, they have to have heard about the app, want to download the app, get through, interact with the app, and then we're finally able to really personalize the journey for them. But it's that hurdle and obstacle to get there. So that's where we're at. Like I said, it's 6 months old. Our hotel in June will come up on its year anniversary for an 85-year-old company, and we are really excited to keep exploring and keep building this. But with that, that's it.
We have time for questions for Aaron.
I did such a good job, nobody wants to ask a question.
Are you creating personas off of this data? Or how are you, tell us a little bit about the kinds of segmentation that you're doing off of the data.
Yep, so we started by bucketing, right? Not personalization, but really segmentation of saying, we think they're gonna like this. We think if with the lenses, there's gonna be a kid theme. We think there's gonna be a contemporary thing. We think there's gonna be a historical theme. And then we overlay what actually happens with it. And what that has allowed is similar to Chris Jenner's about the content blocks and just pulling in the right thing. It's all an algorithm. Being able to say, all right, we definitely saw that they liked the kids, and they did this, this, and this. It starts to tell us. Some of it at the very forefront was very manual. Our goal is to get it very all automative, but the only way to do that is to truly understand the algorithms that we're building.
What are you learning about your guests from this that you didn't know before in terms of not only their tastes in art, but the ways in which they're interacting and things they might want that you hadn't anticipated?
So some of the basic things we learned very quickly were that we had to optimize the front page of the app once people got in there, and we had to create more of a tutorial because people would start to play with it and then they'd log out. So we had to teach them, we had to do a better job teaching them on the forefront. The other thing we learned is that while women were the most outspoken about using the app, and they were very obvious, they were using it in groups, which I thought was interesting because I was like, oh, it's a self-guided tour, you're gonna be alone with your earbuds in, but they were using it in groups. Men were using it as well, they just weren't as maybe flamboyant about the fact that they were using it. So we were able to see that through the data that we were getting through to different demos. If we only went off of what we saw with our eyes, we would have assumed it skewed only female, and we would have assumed it only skewed middle-aged female because they were the most vocal.
How are you so this is still, still we're talking about a very small sample set. Number of people in the hotel downloading the app. How are you extrapolating from that, the data that you're getting there, to talk to people outside of the app? In terms of how is it informing and changing your customer acquisition strategy, both in email and elsewhere? And how is it informing the ways in which you're communicating with all of the rest of your guests who are not using the app?
So a couple different ways. One, it is a small sample set right now just because we're still startup mode with it. But it changes the way you talk, because when we first started, we talked about, hey, download the St. Kate app. And we started shifting that because app sounded scary to people, as weird as it is. It doesn't sound scary to us in this room because we're all app users. But to the typical middle-aged demographic, download this app was like, no, I'm good. Like, that's why McDonald's still had a minute, like they had to ramp up their app downloads because it was like, no, I don't need your app, it's fine. So we had to call it the art tour. And we had to start calling it different things in our marketing materials, in our acquiring guest campaign. The other thing too is understanding that different strokes for different folks, right? So making sure that everybody understands why they're coming into the hotel. And we have 3 restaurants and 2 bars. We have Milwaukee's only champagne bar. We have a speakeasy steakhouse. We have 4 galleries. We have a theater complex. And so people are walking in that door for many different reasons. And the great thing is once they downloaded the app, I know every time they walk through that door, and I'm able to count that. Now I would love that for all of our items, and we're looking at expanding that. But that also changes how you acquire customers based on what they're doing in the app and what we're able to pull out of that.
Yeah, what are some examples of that? What are some of the things you're discovering that you're able to apply on the acquisition side?
So with the female versus male, we found different ways of talking to folks. If we know that, for this instance, like if we're talking about people who are interested in contemporary art, that has changed how we led some of our emails about art. If we're talking about art talkbacks, we got some feedback through the app that people really enjoy art talkbacks. I didn't know that they would like that. So that changed what our email marketing communications were focused on at the very top. It talked about, hey, join us for this art talkback. And then the artist would pull out their art tour app during the process and talk about like, hey, you can also find my information in here. So again, came full circle. Some of the other ones would be the age breakdown. So it also taught us, like we saw, younger demographic, more contemporary art, definitely were more eager to explore the art throughout the entire hotel. We found that the older demographic, and it doesn't, I'm not trying to bucket people young and old, but that's how we ended up doing it. The older demographic weren't as anticipatory to go to the second floor and the third floor of art without being encouraged. And so for us, it was really important to then take that back into marketing and say, hey, guess what? Did you check out our second floor? This is what you will find. Or check out our third floor. Or if you go all the way to the 10th floor, you'll see this, because there is art all the way through the hotel. But again, it's just because we found that young, and there are studies on this, but the younger demo was more apt and more likely to explore, to just say, worst thing that can happen, someone will ask me to leave. I'll walk up these stairs. And what it taught us is we needed to proactively tell people, hey, come up these stairs. And that was a really interesting insight that we were able to take back, because we work there every day. So we take it for granted that people would just naturally roam around the building. But it turns out they don't.
Erin Lipzow, this is fantastic stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm thinking of painting a big red square. It seems to me that if there's a market for a big red circle, the square is the market to get into. We're going to round out this morning. Let me ask Michael and our panel to come up. Where are you guys? Mike, panel? We're going to round out with a reprise of a panel that we've done, originated several years ago here at the Email Summit, that is always a favorite. Since email, after all, in many ways for digital invented A/B testing, optimizing against failure is sort of baked into the discipline. So what better than to ask a panel to share their biggest screw-ups, the ones that they learned the most from, because it's through errors and testing that we really discover the path forward. It's proven to be, over the last few years, one of our most popular panels. To take the lead on this panel, we have Mike Pattison, who is the who works at you're with Vail, right?
Yes.
You come from, we talked to him beforehand. He comes from an even higher altitude than this, so he among us is best equipped to handle both the altitude and this panel. Please welcome Mike and our panel.
Thanks, Steve. And just so we're clear, I was saying I live at about 5,500 feet, which makes coming to 9,000 feet easier. But yes, true, I live at altitude. So we are here to talk about those oops times when they, both give us the cringe factor, possibly the call from the CMO or our boss saying, why did that subject line have the word proof in it and brackets and a bunch of weird numbers? So we're the people that they call to answer those questions. I'd love to have my panel introduce themselves. I'm going to ask some controversial questions and ask them why they love email. So you're going to tell us whether a hot dog is a sandwich, in your opinion. That should spark conversation later. It's very controversial, people. And then you're going to tell us whether you're in camp cat or camp dog. So Chester, you get to start off.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Chester Bullock. I currently am Director of Marketing Technology at RentPath. I've been in the digital space for 25 years, been in email for 10, and I'm not going to tell you about any mistakes we've made at RentPath because I just started there in July. As far as the hot dog thing, not a sandwich, and dogs over cats every day, especially little French bulldogs.
Hey everyone, I'm Maggie Lisi, and I'm the marketing manager on the CRM team at GoPro. I've been there for about 2.5 years now, and in the manager position for about 2. For the hot dog, I would say not a sandwich. I'm not sure if other people from Chicago, how they feel. And then also team dog, I do own 2 dogs, a Corgi, and then a Border Collie cattle dog mix, who is super crazy and driving me insane. But yeah, looking forward to speaking here today.
Hi everyone, I'm Alana Liebenthal, the marketing manager at 3 Day Blinds. Hot dog, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate, sandwich, yeah. And cats or dogs, I have both, and dogs for sure. You can follow mine at Nacho Average Pitbull on Instagram. Super cute.
Content's super relative so far. Thank you, guys. I'm in Camp Cat, although I grew up with dogs, and then I think a hot dog can be a sandwich. We can talk later if you disagree. So we're going to start the panel off talking to Maggie from GoPro. So you live in a company where everything is taped and watched and probably rewatched and recorded. So for you, this both is like product specific, but also in our space, email is both ephemeral and forever. So I think Chris was talking about how people see emails for a few seconds, but when we make mistakes, they can be forwarded, they can be screenshotted, they can be shared. So Maggie, I'd love to hear about your recent experience at GoPro. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. So my story, my event happened earlier in March. My manager had just recently left my team, so I was the sole team member on the CRM team, basically managing all of our email communications globally. That means lifecycle campaigns, product launches, promotions, everything. On top of that, I also managed our browser notification platform. And during this time in March, our e-commerce team decided to ramp up on all of our promotions throughout all of our supported regions. So this just meant, my workload went from here to way up here. So in March, our EMEA audience usually offered the promotion as choose your accessory. So if you purchased a camera, you'd be able to choose whatever mount or accessory you'd want to receive for free. And then our US audience would usually offer an instant rebate. So this would be $50 off the new camera, $75 off the new camera. During this time, our e-commerce team wanted to see if we changed the EMEA offer to mirror the US offer, if we'd see a lift in conversions. Then we basically mirrored the US offer in EMEA, so it would be $50 off our Hero 7 Black camera. So I was meant to build the emails, send them out. Unfortunately, it was not communicated out if EMEA would stay with $50 off. Of course, they receive euros, so it wasn't communicated out if it would stay in euros or then convert down to whatever that was, which would be 44 euros. I took it upon myself to just convert it down and send it out in my email as 44 euros without checking with the appropriate teams, and the email deployed out to the majority of our EMEA audience, and I received an email the very next day from our director of international e-commerce telling me I had understated the promo. Unfortunately, the promo was so short, I didn't have time to really send an oops email, so all I could really do is, bow my head, say I'm sorry, and fix the reminder emails with the correct offer, which was 50 euros off. Luckily, I'm so lucky that, even though he is a higher up director, international e-commerce, received the email, because he did and informed me of my mistake, I was able to correct the other emails before they deployed out. So from this, my learnings: don't assume you know the right pricing, especially when it comes to a promotion. Always reach out to the right people. I've done that since every day, basically. And then another thing is, have your emails QA'd. I was the only person on my team at the time, so I really didn't have anyone to QA my emails, but I could have reached out to someone from the social team or the advertising team to QA those emails because they were supporting the same offer. So maybe they would have found, the pricing discrepancy and informed me of it. So since then, since that mistake, our e-commerce team has put together a promotional calendar. And so this states every single promotion that's running in every region. It has the currency within that region, so I know what correct currency to put into all of my emails. It also states the promotional dates, which helps with building the T's and C's. And then also, sorry, I need to check my notes. But this hasn't just affected me and helped me, but it's also helped the social and advertising team as well, as we rely on this every day. However, one of the things, you can't always assume that the pricing is always going to be correct in that document. I've learned this actually just a couple weeks ago. So since we launched our Hero 8 Black Bundle last month, there's so many moving parts to the bundle. There's the bundle price, there's the savings, there's whatever the total MSRP is for that bundle. And so I took it upon myself to really calculate what was being stated in the promotional calendar for the bundle, just to make sure I have the correct numbers. I'm 150% sure that everything's correct. Unfortunately, I found a mistake only 5 days before our Black Friday, Cyber Monday emails went out, and we were overstating our savings price for the bundle within 6 countries in EMEA. So this was unfortunately already delivered to all the internal teams from our pricing team. So I quickly contacted the necessary teams to get this, information out, and luckily we were all able to change our assets before Black Friday, Cyber Monday deployed. So, but we're going to also learn from this also, and put measures in to keep this from happening again.
Thank you. Maggie, do you find that you often have issues with stakeholder management? Have you implemented any other tools? Are you looking at any other tools in order to make sure that the right approvals happen and that the right safeguards are in place, given the visibility of these communications?
Yeah, so we kind of moved over to using Dropbox paper for all of our copy. And so our copy team actually oversees not only my emails, but also the social and advertising team. And so by doing the paper docs, Dropbox paper docs, they're able to match up kind of the pricings within every single email, advertising, and social, just to make sure we're a unified message. And then I also implemented a smart sheet, which I don't know if anyone uses Smartsheet out here, but it's kind of turned into my deployment calendar. And so within that, I list out each touch that I'm going to be sending, the promotion that's running, the promotional price that's going to be within that email. And so if something changes within the promotional calendar, I can match that up to my Smartsheet calendar to see if it's changed, and if it has, take the appropriate measures to change.
That's awesome. Thanks, Maggie. Just a quick show of hands. Has anyone made a promotion pricing mistake this year? Any of their emails? No one's willing to admit that? Just one person? I don't believe that. She's probably on
Feel your pain.
She's probably on Team Sandwich. Smart one back there. Thanks, Maggie. I'd love to move to Alana. Luckily, you have a lot of curtains and things to hide behind when mistakes happen. So could you tell us about your most recent mishap and what you learned from it?
I'm going to take a blind eye to that pun. Sure. So I think we've all inherited an instance, or we've all started at a new place, and kind of you have to work within all the programs and things that are in place already. And that's kind of where I was when I first came to 3 Day Blinds about a year and a half ago. I had inherited an ESP. I inherited all these programs. And I thought, okay, great, I don't have to really do anything. These are all set in stone, and I can just focus on the fun stuff, all the personalization, the segmentation, the automation, all the fun things we've been talking about today. And I was sorely mistaken, because as I was trying to come up and brainstorm with all these different plans, I realized that a lot of the programs that they had in place were not working well. Some things they didn't even have authorizations that were verified with different mailbox providers, and there was a lot of technical background, not fun stuff that needed to get kind of fixed and cleaned up before I could even think about doing all the fun stuff. So here I was thinking, smooth sailing, I've got this great, I'm working for a good company, they know their stuff, let's get to work and blast through and do all these fun personalization things. And I had to pause, take a few giant steps back, and kind of start over. How are we processing opt-outs? How are we making sure all of our technical background stuff, all those authorizations, are we verified? Are we thinking through programs from start to finish? Are we able to process people all the way through? These are just things that people were working in silos and weren't connecting to each other, weren't kind of following the train of thought all the way through to completion. That really prevented me from doing the fun stuff that I wanted to do. So it kind of set back my timeline for the things that I wanted to get done. And I had to go and do a lot of really boring technical background work, but it's super important. And actually through that process, I found that we were able to kind of see a lift in engagement in our email programs just from kind of cleaning up and getting our deliverability back to where we want it to be, getting our inbox placement where we want it to be. All the personalization stuff I wanted to do, I was kind of seeing that lift that I wanted to see just by cleaning up and starting from scratch and really thinking through all these processes before. And now I'm able to have, our data is cleaner, and I'm gonna be able to see results easier that are actually accurate and aren't just because our data is dirty or we're not tracking things properly or people aren't getting pushed through programs properly. So my biggest mistake, I think, was just kind of sprinting before I learned how to crawl, essentially.
I love Alana's story because it really speaks to the idea of not an immediate mistake, but the mistake of being complacent and not really kind of doing those checks. Alana, what advice would you give these other marketers about, like, what is the right 10,000-mile check, if we were to use, like, the car analogy, right? Like, we don't want the engine light to come on. Like, when should we be checking? How often? Like, have you set up a regular cadence for your own program? Because I feel like some of us probably get into a space where we're in the day-to-day, and we forget to be like, wait a minute, we need to zoom out here, check everything. Is everything still optimized? Which can be like, I'll never do that again. I'll never, like, let that cart email perpetuate for a year without checking it.
Right, yeah, so similar how you have to, check your oil every now and then. I just got a car, so I'm kind of don't really know what I'm talking about with car analogies, but yeah, there's oil in there, right? So if you don't have, I think what helped us a lot was kind of talking through getting all of your different departments aligned up and talking through what programs need to be in place. And we actually didn't have a lot of automation with those kind of background programs. So like monitoring your bounces, if you don't have an automated report that kind of monitors bounces that you're looking at, so you can kind of see, is there an issue at a certain mailbox provider? Because we're all trying to engage people. And I found that you can do that with your subject line tests and your content for sure. But I think one thing that gets overlooked is just kind of your technical health of your email programs and the background, the authorizations, the verifications, and so having a bounce report, having a deliverability report, monitoring your inbox placement, those things all help me kind of get a general idea of the health of our email programs, where we needed to kind of step in and come up with a process if it wasn't there, or fix one that was broken, and that's what I would do. Yeah.
That's great. Are you using any tools that you'd like to point out that maybe we wouldn't have heard of? Or
yeah, so Return Path is one that we use to monitor our inbox placement, and that's been super helpful just to kind of, see, are you going into spam? Are you even getting through the gateways? Are people seeing your messages? And, if you optimize your inbox placement and your deliverability, that kind of helps you get the numbers that you might not otherwise have gotten, or, you can do all these cool things. You can use movable ink or something similar to generate awesome email content, but if no one can see that, or if things just aren't getting processed the right way, it's kind of, you just spend a lot of time and money doing something that's not going to move the needle. And I found that just kind of going back to the basics and, start from, think about it like you're starting from scratch and just kind of go through all the different things that you need to think about. And it helped us kind of improve our engagement overall just by we didn't change anything with our email programs other than kind of cleaning them up.
That's awesome. Thank you. Now, Chester, set the stage for me. Chester's got a really fascinating story. It's 2012. The fate of the free world literally is in your hands. Go.
All right. So before I dive into that real quick, I want to plug Michael's roundtable after this. If you've got a better story than any of us, then I brought gifts too, just one, but Salesforce Marketing Cloud for Dummies. I co-authored this a couple years ago, and it's a signed copy, so come see us at the table. Let's see. By show of hands, who here presses send? Hold your arms up. So not very many people who push send. Okay, interesting. Keep them up. How many of you have made a mistake before? If you haven't, then drop it. That went out live to your audience. Okay, good. How many of you felt like or you read the feedback after that mistake and people told you that you ruined their lives? Scott, yeah? Okay. A couple here. How many of you, your mistake was such that it landed your company in the national news cycle for 3 days? That was me. You did here. Okay, awesome. We have a lot to talk about then. All right, so back in 2013, I worked for Ticketmaster, and I was asked to be a part of a special team within the organization that supported the second Obama inauguration. Prior to the current administration's inaugurations, and this is not a political thing at all, but prior to the current administration, Ticketmaster had supported like the prior, I want to say, 7 or 8 inaugurations. Very non-biased thing. We just go in, sell tickets for all the inaugural events, anything from the parade to the 2 different balls. I think at one time there were 3 different balls. I'll be honest, one of them we called the money ball because that's where all the big donors came. But we supported all of that stuff because at the end of the day, these are access-controlled events from the actual inauguration itself all the way on down. So I was out in DC for 3 weeks supporting this thing. We were in a very nondescript basement of some boring government building on the wrong side of the mall where there was no nightlife. And we were just sending out emails, notifying people these are on sale times for different things and that sort of stuff. And then came the time of the big event, and a few things stand out in my mind from this. But basically, we were tasked with, we had a list of about 250,000 people, all people who had written in and said they were interested in attending an event, or people who had donated some amount of money in the past to the Obama campaign, and all that sort of thing. All of these 250,000 people were going to get their own personalized special URL that they had to click on in order to get access to the Ticketmaster system that had their ticket allocation available. Now, mind you, 250,000 people, if you've been to DC, you can get them all on the National Mall and, you know, maybe Photoshop them to make them look like there's more of them. But the biggest thing is you can't get that many people into a convention center for the ball. You don't have that many tickets available to sell to people to go sit on the grounds of Congress for the inauguration itself. So we're talking about a very finite inventory with a very large audience. These are going to be high demand tickets. So it was a Sunday night, I remember, because the Redskins were in the playoff game. I'm not a Redskins fan, but there's relevance here. The Redskins were playing that night. It was probably about, I want to say about 6 or 7. I had just completed the email. The email was perfect. Links were all good. All the statements in it were good. A copy was good. Imagery, everything was valid. So we were using a white label version of a platform that I may have written a book about that was specially customized for Ticketmaster. And what we weren't aware of was not all the core functionality that was in that platform came across, and I didn't think to test it. This is totally on me. I'm not trying to throw them under the bus. But I didn't test it ahead of time, so I wasn't sure what was going to happen when certain things didn't line up. But they shouldn't have lined up. So I get the email all processed. I'm on the screen that says send, and I've got the deployment date, which is supposed to be tomorrow morning at 4:30 in the morning. And the audience is all selected and everything else. Everything looks good. I have 1 or 2 other people come over and double check this thing for me to make sure everything looks good. We're all like, yeah, looks great. So I hit send. How many of you who've made that mistake knew right away that mistake was made? All right, we got one couple back there. So I knew instantly. I was like, something doesn't seem right. So I go into the back end of that particular platform and start looking at things. And anybody who's used their stuff knows it's wicked fast. So 250,000 email messages went out in the span of like 2 minutes. And then it occurred to me, they weren't supposed to go out right now. They were supposed to go out tomorrow morning at 4:30. So we draft I draft an oops email, get a representative from the DNC over, say, hey, this is what's wrong. All of my ticketing guys are a little bit frustrated with me. Where's the Vivid Seats guy? He's around here somewhere. If you've worked in the ticketing business, you know that that can be a high-stress situation when you have a high-demand event coming on. They hadn't loaded all the inventory yet into the systems, so they were going to have to do a bunch of stuff to get this thing to go live. Our rep from the DNC says, ship it. Let's go live with it. Don't worry about the oops email. Let's just turn everything on. So the fantastic team that I had with me there at Ticketmaster turned everything on, and we sold out in about 15 minutes. And then we didn't really think much of it. Fast forward to the next morning, and I get woken up with a phone call. What did you do? This is kind of a synopsis version of it, but basically that was the gist of it. It's like, what did you do? What happened? We were in the national news. All of a sudden, Ticketmaster was involved in a big controversy to keep certain people from attending inaugural events by way of this email going out at the wrong time. Conspiracy theories abounded, as anything does with the government and all that sort of thing. Rachel Maddow basically called for my head without knowing it was me. Well, now Rachel, here I am. I still, in prepping for this panel, went back and looked at all the old news stories. They're still out there. Internet's awesome. They're still all out there, and they still all remind me of that day. But what really got me was going through all of the feedback from people and saying, people were like, I was going to drive up from Georgia for this once-in-a-lifetime event, and I'll never get another chance to see something like this again, and yada, yada, yada. I understand the significance of the Obama administration and all that sort of thing. I get it. But it was just, on one hand, it was heart-wrenching. On the other hand, it was like, okay, this is still just one thing in your entire life. This can't make your entire life. So I felt terrible. I thought I was going to get fired. I didn't. My boss there was amazing, and I learned a lot out of that experience. But the very first thing is, when you look at a date, make sure it's the correct date. Because basically what happened is the system said, that date's already passed, I'm just going to go ahead and send. Thankfully, in the retail version of that product, it says that date's already passed, what do you want to do? But we didn't have that in ours. So that's the biggest thing that happened to me.
That's pretty huge, Chester.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. You're brave. You're brave. So can you tell me, how did that change, 6 years on, how's your process changed? How's your QA changed? How do you work with your team? How do you train people that you work with that are often handling, maybe not always as monumental of matters, but they're often very important to the company at the time?
Sure. No, that's a good question. I handled it by never pressing send again. That's not totally true, but I sure wish it could be. But even at that time, I had a certain attention to detail. In that situation, we even had the checks and balances in place. Somebody was there, double-checked it, somebody else double-checked it, everybody said, no, this looks good. We all just missed that, since we were working late on a Sunday night, that it said Sunday and not Monday, because it was just dates, it wasn't days. So that made it a challenge. But that also, just that thought in the back of my head continued onward into, disclaimer, I used to work for Morgan at Trendline, ran the Silicon practice there. And if anybody here has met Alex Williams, he's, I don't know what his title is now, but he's still at Trendline. He and I used to have these conversations all the time. These moments, every single one of you who've made that mistake, that has stuck out in your head. And you know that you're not going to make that mistake again. But the only way that you know to do that is by making that mistake. So the debate Alex and I always used to have is, especially in a consulting world, how do we create an environment where people can fail, and fail to some degree at scale, and still feel empowered about their job, they're still going to have a job, that it's okay to make a mistake so that they can learn from it. And I don't think that that's something that's ever been solved, but I would ask all of you, especially those of you that haven't made a mistake before, be patient with the people who have, or the ones that are going to happen, because they're going to happen again. You almost had one, you guys caught it in time, so that's awesome. But until you have people who are confident about their status and their security within the organization they're working for, you're going to have all sorts of weirdness. And so I don't know that I'm really answering your question very well, but from a human standpoint, I mean, I couldn't have felt any worse. It's just not possible. I'll never make that mistake again. It's just not possible. But would any of that have been the case, and would I be where I am today if I hadn't made that mistake? What other kinds of mistakes might have I made down the line, although this one's pretty big in scale. You don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's an awesome answer. It's really good for us to think about how do we manage up to say that if we're, kind of like what athletes say is if we're not failing, we're not pushing hard enough. And I think marketers are trying to find that perfect intersection of perfection and pushing the limits, and it's not possible. Literally traveling here, packing for here, on Saturday, I got an email subject line from my company that had a proof message in it. I was like, oh, I don't know if my team was like teeing that up for this panel, but I definitely got to figure out what's at the bottom of this. But it's because we're doing so much testing and pushing that I think there's going to be more mistakes. So I'd love if like last minute rapid round, or what do you guys call that? There was like a flash round. If you guys have any thoughts about how you've tried to like talk to your, your team or your greater marketing org of like, if we're not failing, we're not trying hard enough. If you have any thoughts on that.
Well, after I yell at full volume for 10 minutes, I like to kind of take a step back and just, no, I mean, we've all made mistakes, and we're all guilty of it, and, there's a way that sometimes your mistakes can actually work out for you. We had, I was before my time, but we sent out a wrong subject line that said, hey, this looks good in Outlook. And you know what? It had one of our highest, open rates. So sometimes a mistake can be, I liked, I forget her name, I'm so sorry, but the whole idea of feeling forward and learning from those mistakes. And sometimes your mistakes kind of work out, so.
That's great. I think, are we going to have questions if there's any other thoughts?
We can go to Q&A, but I thought, actually, I was curious about if anybody else had
Maggie, do you
response to that
have any
question.
thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, just learn from your mistakes and, don't put yourself down about it too much. They are going to happen. So just move forward and keep your head up.
I like what you said about, you should always be pushing to the point where a mistake could happen. If you're playing it too safe, what are you doing this for? Yeah.
Totally agree. Now we have time for questions, I think.
Questions? Right back here.
And then we have one more controversial question, because I don't know if the hot dog thing is going to catch on. So I've got one more controversial question before we end, but we'll do questions first.
Oh, my up. Chris Jenner, Caesars. So, not saying we've done this, but maybe we have. Knowing that errors tend to boost open rates, have you purposefully, sent out an oops email, even though really you didn't have one? Have you all tried that?
That's a great idea.
Oh, yeah. It works.
We have actually debated this at this summit many times, is whether a whoops email is actually an effective way to market.
It is.
Test it.
It works.
I'll test that.
Aaron, did you have it?
Yeah, so you mentioned that creating a culture where you can fail, right? And I'd be interested in hearing from all of you on how you create that culture, because I know something we're constantly working on is when someone's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, being like, it's cool. Yeah, it's fine. Just like, let's move forward. So what other tips do you have on creating that culture of failure?
You guys? I'll take it, I guess. So, when I'm probably not the best one to take this because, 3 weeks into my stint at Trendline, I fired somebody for a big mistake. But it was, the nature of that mistake was a bit different, and it followed a pattern of other mistakes that followed it. So I think what you have to do, at the end of the day, like I said, I'm just a person. I know I'm going to fail. I fail at a lot of things in life. My job shouldn't be any different than any other part of that. But what you do, for me as a manager, what I always take pride in is the relationship that I have with my team. I had 7 people at Trendline. I've got 3 now at RentPath. And I want them all to know that no matter what it is that's going wrong, let me know first. Let me know immediately. We can get ahead of it. We can fix it. And odds are it's not going to end the world, especially where I'm at now. We're talking about apartment rentals and things like that. It's a big situation for people who are trying to rent an apartment. But for us on the email side, nobody's going to die because we sent the wrong email out. Once you put that in perspective and you have a team culture, if you don't have a corporate culture that reinforces the importance of that team player, then I think you'll be okay. And I think you can build that trust with your team to where they'll come to you with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I would just add that, so Vail's big on leadership training, leadership culture, and we always say that no one gets fired for mistakes. They get fired for poor leadership and how they react to mistakes. So I think, from our CMO down to like, even marketing specialists, we're really fostering the idea of like, it's how we react to situations, not really the situation. Of course, we're big into checklist and QA process and, you know, 2 eyes on everything that's sent. So like, we're definitely trying to avoid mistakes. But I think they do happen because we are pushing. But it's really how we react. So I would say that's what we've kind of fostered within our team, which really started with our CMO, is to how we react to those situations.
Yeah, I think the situation where you really have to take matters into your own hands with a team member is if it's willful ignorance. If it's an honest mistake, it's an honest mistake. But if there's a pattern of willful ignorance, then that's a whole different situation.
Hi, I'm Holly DiCostanzo. I work for Eaton Vance. I wondered if any of you had any advice about approaching the organization with an appropriate error rate. We had a culture where our group was expected to achieve flawless execution, which we, simply no one can meet that. So how do you go about the process of establishing sort of an appropriate error rate and showing that you're making progress against addressing data quality and errors?
Yeah, I guess that just goes back to, the QA process and putting that into place. And just, knowing that there is going to be a mistake, but learning from that and, don't look back, don't look, backwards, but look forward and just continue with that QA process and making sure that, your emails or any campaign moving forward are all correct. So.
I think also knowing and understanding your own benchmarks is important too. So knowing that, this is our benchmark level and, we can fail and we're still hitting our benchmarks or even improving them, and then start getting concerned when you're kind of dipping below that.
Practically speaking, though, you need to, if you want to have that type of situation, start keeping track internally of how many times an email has to go back to creative to get some sort of error resolved. When I was at the agency, we had an internal error-free rate. It was something that the company itself prided itself on. It was part of the sales materials and all that, but internally we all knew what it was too. And it goes into the thing, if we can catch an error up front, then the magnitude of it is a lot smaller at the end. Whereas if you catch it right before deployment, now you're talking about, let's say it's an email that took 2 weeks to develop, now you got to go through that whole cycle again. So if you can keep track of the error-free rates at the different stages of the process, then you can create that benchmark that you're talking about and have a better understanding of where the team is and where you need to develop. Do we need better QA up front where we're doing intake for whatever the email or the project is going to be? That sort of thing.
I'll add a little bit to that, Holly. So basically, we've been transitioning technology providers and adding in new technology providers. And so we kind of give ourselves a mulligan with any initial mistake because it's like, oh, we've never done that before. And so I would say I definitely wouldn't count those. And so we tend to update our QA process and our checklist based on each of those problems. If we do it again, then it's like, okay, well, that's a ding. I don't know, just kind of thinking off the top of my head, you could start one of those like workplace error boards that they have like in factories where like 0 days since the last injury, but 0 days since the last email sent with mistake. Maybe that's a way you could track it.
We're going to move around to this. Mike, did you have a hot dog question?
Oh yeah, we have a hot dog question. So how do you say the word GIF? It's an animated image is the definition.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Graphics, it's a hard G. GIF.
Okay, Maggie?
I agree.
See, it's controversial.
I agree, GIF.
This isn't peanut butter, it's GIF.
I'm on Team GIF, so is the person who created the method. I will see you at the cocktail party.
Mike, Hannah, thanks so much. That was great. Before we're going to let all of you bare your souls in your mistakes in one of the round tables. But before we do, John, you've got some activities announcements. Plus,
I do.
Let me announce the lanyards are here. Well, so if you want us to know who you are, oh, there's a caveat?
Well, they're kind of here. They're kind of here.
They're kind of here?
The MediaPost's lanyards are here. So we just got them. There's all weather-related problems, as you can imagine. So we got our lanyards and our little badge holders, our official badge holders with our real official badges. They're out there now. So if you want to get a real lanyard and a real badge holder, you can do that with Julie in your travels. But we have a sponsor, Live Intent, who we produce lanyards for, and they're sitting down in a warehouse right now in Salt Lake City. So I might ask you to take this one off later and put on Live Intense because, you know, we love Matt and the team there. So anyway, stay tuned on that front, and we appreciate your flexibility there. But yes, we have lanyards, Steve. Yes, we do. We do. Okay, real quick, just a couple of things. I want to recognize, of course, our Twitter feed sponsor, Flatiron Media. So stay tuned there. We want to see lots of banter and activity on that as you see fit. Also, Dan brought to my attention that for some of you who might be feeling a little dry in your rooms at night, there are humidifiers in your closets. And if you don't have a humidifier, you can probably ask the front desk and they'll bring you one. So that's a nice little thing. Wi-Fi, sponsored by Info Group. That password is Info Group 2019. If you haven't figured that out yet, it's also on your program with a capital I. Also, don't forget about the T-shirts out there. Those T-shirts are free, complimentary for you. They're the nice, they're cool thermal wear that you can go out and stay warm in for the afternoon activities. So be sure to grab one of those as a keepsake on us. And then quickly, tonight, we have the activities, the afternoon activities, skiing here at Deer Valley, snowmobiling over at Garf Ranch, and also the snowboarding at Park City. The snowboarding shuttle will leave at 2 o'clock to go down to Park City. The snowmobile shuttle will leave also at 2 o'clock. And for skiing at Deer Valley, you'll want to get your ticket from Julie out front here before you leave after lunch today. After lunch, that's when we'll be passing them out. Once lunch is over, you'll make sure you get them from her because she'll be gone after 2 o'clock and you won't get your pass. So make sure you grab those from her. Same, I think, with Park City also, but ask her about that. Then what else do I have here? Quickly. Oh, from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock tonight, we've got the Opry Ski Party sponsored by Adobe. That's going to be in the Champions Room, or Champions Club, which is right next to the ski lockers over on the other side. So when you go to the Stein Bar, you go down the stairs to, you'll see the ski rental place there. To your left is the Champions Club. It's just down the stairs. It's amazing. They've got big screen TVs. They've got foosball. They've got billiards, lots of video games, and a nice bar and things like that. So we'll be there from 4 to 6 today with Adobe. And then tonight, we've got one-on-one meetings in this room from 5:30 to 6:30. You know who you are. Don't be late. We'll have refreshments for you for that. So don't fear. We'll have water too. Don't worry. We'll have water. Jeez. Okay. And then 6:30 tonight, cocktails right below us. Cocktails in the foyer below us from our friends, sponsored by our friends at Movable Ink. And then we'll leave at 7:30 to take the shuttles for the short 10-minute ride for the amazing fireside dinner at Empire Canyon Lodge. You do not want to miss that. It is the event of the event.
You do not want to miss that. If you have never had chocolate fondue, you do not want to miss that.
It's incredible. You will love it. And then after, if that wasn't enough, at 9:30 tonight, we're going to come back here over at the Flagstaff room where we had, right across where we had cocktails last night. We've got 250 OK making late night drinks available and fun for all. And that's going to start around 9:30 and go until question mark. So that was a lot of information.
That was a lot.
But that's what I do.
We have to underscore, go to dinner. Definitely go to. There's cheese fondue on the front end, there's chocolate fondue on the back end, and in between, a couple of roast beefs. I'm a vegan and I go to this.
Yeah. Go to everything. Don't be silly. Come on. All right.
And then we're going to break to roundtables. We've got 4 today. Personalization as a strategy, led by Jackie Dunning, who is the VP of Content and Strategy at Ergo. Where's that going to be? Personalization as a strategy. Where are our signs? Personalization as a strategy, right there. Thank you. Share your screw-ups with Mike. Right back there. New paths to user profile building with Aaron. Right in back. And in front, someone that you'll be meeting later, Amanda from Scott's Miracle Grow. Solving